fellow board members and stand up and introduce yourselves. My name is Jill Stahl-Tyler. 3 kids here in the schools, 1 in BAMS, and then 2 here at Academy. And I've been on the school board. I don't know why I should pass the screen first. Been in the school board for like a year and a half is all.
Mark Truhan, former Green Street parent. The young one is now in high school, and I'm board member. Been on board 5 years.
I'm Dave Scholes. My daughter is in 8th grade now, former Academy student, and I've been on the board for 3 years.
Peter Yost. I have a daughter at Oak Grove and a daughter at BAMS, and I was elected to the board a week ago or so. I'm the newbie, not Jill.
So I'm Ron Staley, Superintendent of Schools, and I will introduce the administrative staff. Jim Kane, our business administrator. Paul Smith, one of our curriculum coordinators. Lyle Holliday, curriculum coordinator. Marisa Duncan-Hawley, our special ed director. Down this table, John Reed, principal at Green Street. Andy Pachuli, principal at Academy. Jen O'Neill. See, you have 2 Jens together. You got Jen O'Neill, assistant principal at Academy. Sorry, Jen. And Jen Hemmingson, principal at Oak Grove. And Deb Cass, executive director of Early Ed Services. And are there any other principals or assistant types? We do have some academic coaches. Brian Bittner, our literacy coach. Veronica Sampson, our math coach. And Bryn Tucker, our data coach. And we'll be hearing from people very shortly on this subject. So what we'd like to start with the first half hour or so is provide an overview of some of the assessment data. Paul Smith will be giving us a perspective of our Brattleboro Town results, along with a comparison of state and national results. I think it's always good that we look at the national comparison, the NAEP results, as they call it, National Assessment of Educational Progress. And it's really telling to see how Vermont schools do nationally, and I think it's nice that we are able to show you that. The coaches will be talking about some specific strategies and interventions that they've worked with in the schools and specifically with teachers, and I think they'll show some results from that work. We have a group from Academy School teachers that will be showing some school-based work and results that is very impressive. We're saving the best for last on that. And then we'll move into the budget review phase. Margaret will start that, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and going into the details of the budget. And we hope that you had a chance to see the displays, the Farm to School display out in the hallway, and the foreign language display right in the back here. And please have a chance to get a look at that and ask questions about those programs, because we feel that it's really part of the comprehensive education that our students get. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul Smith.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to
Thank you for the opportunity to present again this year. What I'm going to be doing is giving you an overview of some of the large-scale assessments, both the National Assessment of Educational Progress and the NECAP assessment that's done in this state, and show you some overall results, and then I'll turn it over to the individual coaches to talk about some specific things that are happening in schools. Before I do that, though, I want to say that I want to be clear that while we are talking about student performance results on large and small scale assessments, none of us believes that numbers define students, okay? None of us believes that that's all that students are about. However, I will say that we found that looking at data, understanding where kids are in terms of those assessment results, has provided us with a view that's been extremely useful, as you see in some of the presentations later on, been extremely useful in improving student learning. And so while we present, there are other elements of school that you'll see as we talk about the budget in later discussions. This is just about the data, but that's not the only thing that schooling is about. Okay, just want to be clear from the start. So, first question, how do Vermont students do on the National Assessment of Educational Progress relative to other states? This is a national assessment. It's done every other year, has been for quite a while. And what we can do is use the data to look at where students are. This particular map shows 8th grade reading results. Vermont is in blue. Let me see if my pointer will show up there. Vermont is there in blue, and that means it's the state of interest. Any state that is this lighter colored beige is at the statistically same level as Vermont, and any state that is in the darker color orange is statistically below Vermont in terms of student achievement results. So as you can see, there are no states above Vermont. There are a number of states, and these often are the same states. Massachusetts particularly, sometimes New Hampshire, Rhode Island, New Jersey, a few states out west. And these results pretty consistent. I've been doing this presentation for some time, and these are pretty consistent results over time. Here's 4th grade math. Vermont is the state of interest. You'll see a few states that are statistically above Vermont, a few that are at the same level as in Vermont, and the vast majority that are not, or that are below where Vermont students are performing. So we can say generally Vermont students score consistently higher than other students from most other states, partly because Vermont standards are set high, students rise to that level of performance. However, there is still an achievement gap between students from high-income backgrounds and students from low-income backgrounds, the so-called achievement gap. And you can see that, for instance, in the NAEP results for 4th grade reading and it's a little hard to see years 2002 through 2011. The results are essentially flat, well, some gains, but essentially flat, and a gap between students from high-income non-low-income backgrounds, say it that way, and low-income backgrounds. And similarly, here's the 8th grade math. Results are certainly on the rise, but this gap between, and generally this is measured by students eligible for free or reduced lunch, families eligible for free or reduced lunch, and those not eligible. You can see that the scores are increasing, relatively speaking, but there's also still this gap. And so one of the big challenges for us and for many other school districts across the country is how do we close that achievement gap? How did students do on the fall NECAP assessment? This is in aggregate students in Brattleboro Town schools from the years 2006 through 2011 for reading, 2006 through 2011, math, 2006 through 2011, and writing, 2006 to 2011. In one of the years, the writing assessment was being recalibrated and therefore wasn't done. The scale is percent of students designated at the proficient level or above. So you can see increasing scores, increasing trend over time for reading and for math. In comparison to state levels, this is the most recent 2 years. Here's Brattleboro Town student for reading, Brattleboro Town students and state students for 2010, and then Brattleboro Town and state for 2011. At this point, Brattleboro Town students are on average scoring higher than those at the state level. Similarly for math, 2010 and 2011, real gains for mathematics and writing for 2010 and 2011. Writing is clearly an area we need to do some work on. In terms of the achievement gap, this is reading over the years 2006 to 2011 for students not on free and reduced, students on free and reduced. Some closing of the gap, but still clearly some work to do. And for mathematics, this is, to me, the most encouraging. It feels to me as if we're starting to see some real closing of the gap there. Okay? Any questions so far? I know I've bashed through this very quickly. Frick?
Yeah, I was wondering, I know that we would like to see that gap closed all the way, perhaps, but in terms of what's actually realistic, are we close to what can be achieved, or is there a, I mean, I'm just imagining that by the nature of that you would have to get the kids in the free and reduced to work really hard to get anywhere near, or the other ones would have to be totally slacking off to get it together. So what's the, given a reasonable amount of effort in both counts, what's a reasonable gap?
Well, there are studies for both urban school districts and for specific to Vermont. There are studies that have indicated that there are schools in the large urban school districts with 90% free and reduced, 90% students of color, 90% proficient on the statewide assessment. Those results are possible. The research is there. So I would say it's not necessarily so that poverty means there has to be a 5% gap or a 10% gap or a 30% gap. I think really it matters on, it depends on the school and the conditions and a number of factors. Okay, but no, I haven't seen any research that indicates there's sort of a wall over which you can't go. Andy.
Andy Davis, District 3. Do we have any charts or data for, at the moment, kids enter our school system? But from my own personal reading, a lot of that gap has been established early in life, before entrance into the school system. Do we have a baseline for, I know there's some statistics nationally done on, for example, size of vocabulary at age 5. And some of them are quite stop you in your tracks. And I think all of us that work in the schools are quite aware of that. From the very beginning, even the starting line for success in schools is not set at the same place.
Sure, there have been a couple of assessments. One, the kindergarten readiness survey has been done for a number of years. That's more, and the difficulty that you run into in preschool assessments is the degree to which you can get at truly academic factors separate from behavioral work habits kind of factors. I will say that Act 62 that provides for public funds for preschool education and private providers by contract with the school districts. Brattleboro Town contracts with a number of preschools. One of the requirements of that contract is that a standard assessment is being done on a regular basis. This is the first year of implementation of that, so we don't have the numbers. So in future, we should have a much better handle on the sort of the profile in terms of that, of kids coming into the system.
Thank you.
Bob Tortolani, District 2. Is there any data out there on the relationship between poverty or people who are lower economic class versus middle class in terms of the parents spending time with the children after school? That piece of it?
Boy, that the literature that's available on that subject is I guess I describe it as a bit of a minefield because there are so many other agendas and factors wrapped up in it. It's really hard to make, from what I understand from the reading I've done, it's really hard to make broad generalizations about classes of individuals. And so I'm really reluctant to go there. And besides that, regardless of what the family background is, we still have a lot of factors in our favor that we have control of in schools that can truly make a difference. The Colemans, there's a study way back that seemed to indicate, some of you probably remember, this was some time ago, that seemed to indicate that it was parental education level and family income status that had the strongest factor, and that actually has been strongest influence on student achievement, and that research has actually been debunked. It's the strongest factors have to do with what teachers are able to do in classrooms in terms of student learning.
Okay. John Seacrest, District 2. Given finite resources, how does the school allocate resources between trying to bring the bottom line up higher and versus trying to get the top line higher as well, or both lines together?
I don't, and from where I sit, the chair I sit in, I don't see that distinction going on. It's about moving all students along. So, for instance, when we talk about providing resources or providing additional time, we're talking about an enrichment block that includes support for students that are struggling and enrichment for those kids that are doing well. So I haven't encountered a mindset of, oh, we just have to provide resources for this segment of the population. There's interest in moving up scores.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. I would say when we hear from academy teachers, I think you'll get a pretty good indication of that answer. Okay.
And what I'd really like to do in terms of talking about support for classrooms is move into talking about what the coaches do. There we go. So, how are we addressing this achievement gap? I'm going to turn the speaker over to the coaches and let them talk about what they're doing. But we do want to emphasize this is not just about the coaches, but it's about the administrators, the teachers, the paraeducators, everyone in the school working to bring up the learning of everyone.
Right. This is Bryn Tucker.
And the students, the hard work of our students too. Paul just didn't want to answer questions anymore.
Can't hear you over here.
I said Paul just didn't want to answer questions anymore. I think I was saying. So I'm Bryn Tucker. I'm a district data coach. This is my second year in the position. This is the second year of the position. My prior background was 6 years in the classroom, 5th and 6th grade level. So I'm going to speak to you a little bit about some of the work that I do with teachers and also the work that I observe teachers and students do related to this data picture that's ever more present in our schools and our society. So Paul spoke a lot about NAEP data and NECAP data, which is like a one-time-a-year kind of thing. It's the students take the test once, we get the results, which is really interesting and really helpful to reflect back on our curriculum. Teachers are really anxious to get that in February when they come out. But it's also not super frequent in terms of as a classroom teacher to use that data to then turn around and drive your instruction. So in addition to that layer of data, we are also doing benchmarking with students 3 times a year. So those are really quick assessments where, for example, in reading, students read 3 one-minute passages 3 times a year. And from there we collect some data, and we use a system that's online. It's called AIMSweb, where we are able to take a look at how our students are performing in relation to national aggregate norms, and to get a sense of, okay, well, 60% of our kids are really meeting that standard, and here's a chunk of kids, 20%, who maybe are at risk of not meeting that standard, and here are another 20% that are really far below, not only compared to their class here, but compared to national peers. So we do that 3 times a year, all students at grade level for both reading and math. To address a little bit the question about children coming into kindergarten, we also start with very basic measures in kindergarten as well, letter naming, letter sound. And these measures have 30 years of research base behind them and are proving to be really strong predictive indicators of general reading and math success. So the idea is they're really quick assessments that we get some good quality data from. For kids that we're worried about as a result of that, we will do progress monitoring assessments with them. So every 2 or 3 weeks, a little bit more frequently. So as things are put in place in the core classroom, as they might get an extra skills block or enrichment block, we want to see, are we being effective? Is this making a difference in terms of what's happening with the student? If it is, great, we can continue that. And if not, maybe we can adjust to put something else in place. So that generally happens every 2 to 3 weeks. And then we have a myriad of formative or pre and post or classroom or summative assessments that happen with our teachers across the district. So that might be at the beginning of a unit testing to see what kids know, so teachers can really tailor their instruction for kids who've already got it and kids who are really struggling. It might be a quick, at the end of a math class, 1 question, so the teacher can take a peek at that and adjust his or her instruction the next day to see which kids got it and which didn't. So I'm going to show some examples of these 3 kinds of assessments that we're doing a lot of work with. This is an example of a graph of one of our benchmark assessments. This is one of our classes here in the district. The triangle on the left are the fall results. So in this particular class, 65% of kids were clearly proficient. They were meeting the national 50th percentile. And we had 29% of kids who were kind of at risk, a little below that. And then there were 6% of kids who were at the 10th percentile or below nationally. And then you can see as a result of just 3 months of instruction, what happened with that cohort of students between fall and winter. Really great progress. And so we look at this class-wide to get a sense of where kids are in relation to each other. and in relation to national norms, and also to get a sense of who do we maybe need to do some more assessment with. This isn't a be-all, end-all, but it gives us a sense of who do we need to find out more about so we can really tailor our instruction and support those students' needs on both ends of the spectrum. We're also finding that there's a really strong correlation between this AIMSweb, happens to be a reading assessment, and NECAP. So generally kids who are showing green here have about a 95% chance to go on and be successful with the NECAP, be proficient or highly proficient on NECAP. So we're finding really strong correlation rates in our district. Was there a question?
Arthur Davis, District 3. Are the red ones there the same at the top?
Yeah, so there's still 6% of kids who are in red. But actually the transition is showing, and it's a little unclear, but the transition is showing this of the 3 students who were in the red zone in the fall. 1 of those students stayed there, but 2 of them actually increased to yellow. Whereas the kids who were yellow, there were 14 yellow in the fall, 2 of them kind of decreased their level into red. The standard increases throughout the year. Same reading level passage. So it also helps us see what's happening. There might have been a student who was doing really well who might not be progressing at the same rate as his or her peers, and we can catch that hopefully in an early way as well.
Betty Elwell, District 3, and this is total ignorance on my part, but the word coach, and when I look over you're at Academy School, I don't see coach, so I just want to get a pew to put you in.
Yeah.
For the coaches.
So where do I work?
Are you teachers? Are you paraeducators? I don't know.
Yeah.
I would just need some help.
Sure.
On that.
So we're all licensed teachers.
Okay. Where do
And
you show up on
budget?
I don't know.
So they are district-wide employees that work with all the schools.
All right. So you're with the supervisory union, and you do not show up on any individual school, individual town school.
Be the assessment
Yeah.
for each school.
Okay.
Well, although Jim reminds me that they're federally funded, we use the money from the federal grants to support these positions.
Okay. I just could not find a place to put any of the coaches.
And I was ignorant about the question too, so thank you for asking. I work in every school in the district except for the high school currently. I work in 8 schools. So of those students who showed up in the yellow or the red category of those triangles we were peeking at, we can do something called progress monitoring with this system. So we're checking in more frequently than we are with just those 3-time-a-year benchmark assessments. So Paul, if you could click the arrow. So those red lines are indicating those 3 times a year when we would normally be assessing all students. And you can see that this is an example. This is a 5th grader who's been assessed much more frequently within that. You can see, some days are great and some days not so great, but generally the student is making a pattern toward meeting his or her goal by the end of the year. And generally, teachers are setting a goal for the end of the year, 50th percentile at least. So we're saying we have really high standards for our students, and we are going to do everything we can to try to bring them to that level, and we're going to see how we're doing on the way. This is another example of a progress monitoring graph. It looks a little bit different. Again, here's the 3-time-a-year benchmarks when we would normally be collecting data about this student. And then we're noticing that the student's a little bit flat. And so this is feedback for the teaching team saying, okay, well, they're not making as much progress as we might like to see given the programming or the time or the group the student is with, or maybe we should start something new. So it's an impetus to evaluate a little bit what's happening in terms of supports for students and adjust things in a timely manner. So this is rates of improvement. So I was mentioning that with this system, we are comparing our students with nationally aggregated norms, and these have been quantitatively field studied. They are pulling representative samples of students to take a peek as what is their average rate of improvement, or ROI. So the graph you're looking at right here, the blue, is the national rate of improvement for kids at the 50th percentile. So average kindergartners, first, second, third, etc., graders. This is, the blue line is nationally, generally kids are improving about this much every week. And And this is our district's rate of improvement for kids who are being progress monitored. And I think this is a really powerful graphic to show the impacts of the interventions that we have in place to support students. Yes?
Mayor Kane, District 2, can you tell us, maybe you did already, how many of them are targeted for this, and are they at both levels that we had seen previously?
Yeah, so generally students on progress monitoring caseloads are kids who are not at grade level yet. They're below the 50th percentile. So kids that we're doing this more frequent assessing are kids who are not meeting the standard. And currently about 30% of kids are on progress monitoring caseloads. It is a lot. My sense is that sometimes there'll be a student who's just missing the target, like they're so close. And teachers, because generally they're feeling like this is interesting and good data to get back, they'll put kids on a progress monitoring caseload and assess them once a month just because they want to kind of keep tabs on it. And so I sense that in our district we have teachers who are really proactive with using this to really make sure that our kids are progressing as we might want them to be. Yeah. I also talked about formative assessment. One of the things I love doing with teachers is working on specific projects with them where they're really interested to see, well, I tried this 6-week math intervention with my kids and I want to know, did it have an impact? Or I'm trying to track behavior data for a student to see if this plan that we have is really working. And so this is an example of a 4th grade team who did a math skills assessment after a 6-week skills block. And that's a little bit like Paul was saying, where there was enrichment for some kids, and they were really working in extra skills work for other kids, and they were really working on skills that were targeted for what each individual student needed. So these are just examples of when the teachers pulled together the data, and it was actually a classroom teacher who I worked with to do this and organized all of this. It's amazing to see the capacity that's being built with teachers across the district. This is just an example where the teachers are looking at this data to say, okay, well, on number 3, only 22 of our students really met the standard on that one. So that's something we have to go back and work on, maybe as a whole class. Whereas number 6A, 45 out of our 49 students nailed that one. That was great. And maybe with just those 4 students who didn't get it, we can pull them aside for a quick 15 or 20-minute review to make sure they really mastered that skill. Here's another quick example of that. This is a kindergarten class here in the district. So here was a math assessment for kindergartners. This is done in November, and so the kids in the red, this is a Vermont assessment. It's linked to the Common Core standards, which are the new standards that are rolling out nationwide, almost nationwide. There are a few states who haven't joined on. So the red is indicating kids who are far below meeting that standard. Yellow is they're really close. Green is they've got it, and dark green is they're far exceeding the standard. So this is where the kids were in November, all kids across the whole grade. And then here's January. Can you go back and forth again, Paul? It's so fun to see that. It was 6 weeks of work with these teachers to see that dramatic improvement for the kids. And so it's really fun to pull together data like that.
Martha Ramsey, District 2. Could you go back like 2 or 3 to the one that showed the red ones coming in? Yeah. Where the red does not go way ahead of the blue, what area is that?
So we're looking at an aggregate of all the Brattleboro Town schools, and that happens to be 4th grade. So it looks like kids on progress monitoring caseloads in 4th grade across our 3 town schools are about 1/10 of a word slower than the national average kids who are on this progress monitoring caseload. And so when we see something like that, it is an opportunity to take a look as administrative teams and teaching teams and saying, this is interesting. We seem to have this trend across the board, but what's going on in 4th grade? And to be able to dig a little bit deeper and take a peek at that. I hesitated showing that tonight, but I think it's also, that's the reality of what we're looking at too, is sometimes we're doing great in some areas, and sometimes there's things that don't look exactly as we want to see right away, but we're doing the work to try to further uncover things. So this is kind of a summary of my role. I do a lot of trying to, when I started a year and a half ago, I had a teacher say, "Data coach, that just makes me shudder." So I think a lot of my work is trying to kind of demystify, like, oh my gosh, I have to use data for my teaching, because at least I, anyway, use data in so many areas of my life, whether it's the kind of tomato sauce I'm going to buy, or which car I'm going to buy, or where I'm going to send my kid to school. And so I think it's really important to to help teachers see this as a tool for their teaching, not something that's being imposed on them. Supporting teachers in the use of technical tools, and supporting the analysis of those tools, the information we get from those tools to really target and drive our classroom instruction. Teachers have amazing inquiry questions that I'm starting to get. Like, I was working really hard last year with my set of third graders on analysis and interpretation and reading. And I'm really curious to see what were their kneecap scores, that particular cohort of kids now when they took that as fourth graders, and did it have an effect? And what else can we pull together to really measure that? So it's fun to do those kinds of investigations to support teachers' programs. We really look at student level data, class data, grade level, school, and also district level. And I think the other thing, speaking is with experience as a classroom teacher, is it's really powerful to help teachers quantify a little bit, and it's just a tiny bit, of the effect that they're having on students. Especially that kindergarten slide that I showed, that in just 6 weeks, here's how the students took off. I think so often as educators, we sense that we're making a big impact with kids, and we sense that they're really learning. But at least for me, sometimes it was a little like, well, I hope they've got it, you know. And I think we're making a lot of strides to really figure that out a little bit more, and also use that as a way to really celebrate not only the students, but the amazing work of the teachers across our district. So that's a big part of my job as well. Questions? Caleb?
I'm kind of new at the town rep role, and I've only been in town 4 years. Do you have any sense, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, without this role, or in general, schools doing good, this is good, schools doing bad? Seems like everything's doing great and better, but it can't go on. It hasn't. Is there any context?
Of how are we doing now versus 10 or 20 years ago?
Do you think your role has helped?
Thank you, Maureen.
I probably want to hear from some classroom teachers, but just generally, the achievement gap used to be like 30 points nationally and in Vermont, and there's been a real focus on closing that gap. And I think the focus on literacy and numeracy at the earliest grades has been heightened and will continue to heighten. But I think probably classroom teachers would be the best ones to speak to that.
I mean, the coaches have been awesome, both math, literacy, and that has been great because our teaching has gotten a lot more focused, and so it helps because they give us kind of this broad view and this way to look at our classrooms and our specific students who we may be struggling with and help them to really make really impressive gains. So it's been, I think they've been invaluable for us to have as teachers.
I think I also recognize that teachers have so much on their plate, and they do such an amazing job balancing such a myriad of things. And so it feels like a great honor to me to be able to do this one piece, or support with this one piece that can potentially have a big impact. I think this is qualitative, not quantitative, but it's been a real shift just in the last year and a half to say, like, oh, I shuddered about that idea of using data in my classroom, to teachers seeking me out. Like, I can't keep up with the amount of requests that I have in terms of that kind of support and what teachers are interested in looking into.
I'd just like to add, too, that when you have a district coach like this, what happens is a consistency. So in the past, if we were looking at data, I may be looking at something in my room, and the other secondary teacher may be looking at something in her room. And across the town, she's looking at something else completely. So having this one person with this role gives a consistency, and the consistency piece has probably been the biggest school improvement that we've had.
Marshall Wheelock, District 2. After your last statement, this will sound like a funny time for the question, but I noticed that compared to national data, we do very well math, we do very well reading, and not so much in the writing area. For the WebSAME, I believe you said the program was?
AIMSweb, yep.
We have math and we have reading. Do they have a program, or is there a program that could be used in the writing area? And if so, has there been any thought given to perhaps including that in the program?
Yeah, there is an assessment within AIMSweb that's writing. It's more difficult to find national aggregate norms related to writing because it's such a qualitative, you're looking at so many qualitative features. But I believe actually fifth grade, at least one fifth grade teacher here, if not the whole team, is piloting that and checking it out and seeing if it's usful for them.
Linda Daniels, District 2.
when you've had the red analysis in the 4th grade was below, do we have the same kind of format for the prior years, so when they were 3rd graders, were they still low?
Yeah, so we started using this Ames Web system last year, and a really nice feature of that is it gives us longitudinal information, so we can go back and query that. And I did not yet pull it, so that's a great inquiry question, to see if we found a similar trend last year. It's my sense that we did not end the year in that way.
Because are they going to stay there?
Yeah, so,
That's scary.
yeah, I have of course, different cohorts have unique characteristics as students go through school. My experience working with these 3 schools in the district is that I get to meet with teachers every month or every other month, and so when we see something like this isn't a dip that we noticed earlier in the year. It might just be a fluky kind of thing at this point, and so there's an opportunity to get in there really quickly and say, okay, look at this is really interesting, so what's going on here? What else do we need to dig into to uncover, and do we need to shift anything? We still have 3 months in the academic year, which is different from just getting your NECAP results in February, and you get that once a year, and you're not having as frequent feedback in terms of your data that's comparable to state or national norms.
Would that be a traveling format, traveling data for next year, that you could see where the 4th grader is in the 5th grade?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm Mary Ellen Bixby, District 3. Piggybacking on Marshall's question about the writing dip, you mentioned that one teacher in the 5th grade was using this new data driving machine, but I thought the score, which was somewhat a reason for concern, was an 8th grade score. Are you working with that level as far as your district?
I do work with, I work with K through 8 in the district. And so I think because we can use this Ames Web system to find national norms to compare our kids to, but those aren't available with writing, so it's a little bit more qualitative how kids are scored with that assessment.
So they're not available for 8th grade writing across the country? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the writing assessment with this doesn't have norms. It doesn't have that as national.
Any other assessments?
There are, not that I'm aware of, and I'm wondering, we also want to hear from the math coach and the literacy coach, and Brian could provide some of that information right at the end of Lisa.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to better answer your question.
So are you able to, Mary Kane, District 2, are you able to identify when the NECAPs come out, they come out every 3 years or 4 years?
NECAP is every January.
Every year.
We get the results.
Okay, so the NECAP one, when they get into 8th grade, are you able to identify those students who are of a low income, who excel in
Yes.
that area? And are you also able to communicate with the actual parents of those children? Do you call them in, say, any informational sessions?
Yeah, I don't personally, although that would be really fun,
Yeah.
but it's my sense that that's something that administrators and teachers are very actively involved in, going to students, congratulating them, calling home, so I'm sure they can answer that
So
question
that must
better.
be a new concept that's happened since my children have been in school? Never happened when my kids did well. That's why I'm wondering.
Well, I can hear what we do here at our parent-teacher conferences. We select one graph and share that with parents, which summarizes their students' progress on Ames Web. And so they have a piece of data that shows them their relative standing to the school, the district, and the national norm. But NECAP information is shared with all parents. That data goes home in a letter to parents.
But if they don't know how to interpret it, then they wouldn't realize the depth and breadth of how fantastic it was, unless you help that piece.
Right. So teachers do that during the conferences. We hold annual NECAP sessions with parents as a school. Academy is on April 17th, if you'd like to come back. And a lot is written to parents explaining that. So the information they get right now is pretty user-friendly.
I'm really conscious of wanting to make sure you have all the time you need for your deliberation, so what I'd really like to do is introduce the math coach, Veronica Sampson, and have her present some of the data that she's been working with. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you.
Veronica Sampson. I'm the district math coach from kindergarten to 5th grade, and I started this position in September. Haven't been kicked out yet. And I'm just going to do a quick review of what my role entails. So I do grade level team visits. I do a lot of student work analysis, and through student work really help teachers make sense of their cohorts, especially as it relates to the math program, and now as it will be relating to the Common Core, which are our new state standards. Should I stand somewhere else because of the buzzing?
Maybe over there. Right over there.
It's distracting. We attend data meetings, the post-benchmark meetings that Bryn Tucker referred to, and we help teachers understand and use data to improve classroom instruction. And recently this is where we've kind of introduced conceptual models of how kids learn math. There's a lot more now known about how we learn concepts from early numeracy up to algebraic reasoning. And so that's something that's been introduced and is revisited in professional development, like grade level meetings. We also have Liz Van Cleef, who's been doing a series of math classes at Dummerston School, but called Making Meaning of Operations, and we have Math as a Second Language. That's a class that comes from Vermont Mathematics Initiative, and we've had What is Mathematical Proficiency? That was a January in-service with another VMI, Vermont Mathematics Initiative staff member, and again, revisiting the learning progressions. It's a tough crowd, I know. I wish I could move. At some point, I'm going to want to go on stage because I'm going to point to my graphs too. So another thing I help with is assessment and support teachers in the collection of and collation of data and assess individual students. And I'm going to kind of give an overview of some of that next. So I am in my 3rd year at the Vermont Mathematics Initiative, and they're connected with UVM. I'm also a UVM student. And the 3rd year, we focus on action research. Action research asks a question, hopefully, that teachers want answered. So this year, it's build collaboration between the math coach and kindergarten classroom teachers in this district, improve student progress in critical early numeracy concepts. And it's kind of referring back to some data Bryn showed from the PNOA, the Primary Number and Operations Assessment. So I basically had some kindergarten teachers say, hey, we need an assessment for our kindergartners. Do you have one? And because we want to inform a 6-week math skills block, which can include intervention and up to enrichment. So there were 3 sections of the Primary Number and Operations Assessment that we did. One of them involved reading and writing numbers. It's called symbolic notation. And this is where I'm going to go up here. I'll just tell you, orient you with what this graph means. It's called a box and whiskers. So this gives a 5-number summary. It gives a minimum number and a maximum number, a first quartile, a median number, and a 3rd quartile. And in between here are considered the 25th to 75th percentiles range. The total possible points on this assessment was 72. And here and here, there were a control group and an intervention group. The control group was a sample size of 19, and the intervention group was a sample size of 38. And a quick answer to this question was, yes, it worked. You can see that the median for the pre-assessment, the intervention group started a little lower, and then they ended up just a bit higher than this one. They had more to grow. Another concept area that was looked at was called groupings. This asked questions about finger patterns and 5 and 10 frames. Can they instantly identify 3 on a 5 frame, can they instantly identify an 8 on a 10 frame? And 5 and 10 partners. What number goes with 3 to make 5? What number goes with 8 to make 10? So again, control, pre and post, and intervention, pre and post. And in this case, with this concept area, the results were found to be statistically significant. So what that means is, I have my notes here, it measures the likelihood that an event occurred by chance. So there was just a 5% chance that this growth occurred only due to chance. So that means there was a direct correlation between instruction and the growth of the students. And the last concept area that was looked at was called forward sequences. So students are asked, start counting from 1. I'll let you know when to stop. Start counting from 13, start counting from 46. Or what number comes just after 4? What number comes just after 9? And skip counting. Count by 10s, count by 2s. Again, control, pre and post. And if I didn't make this clear, the control group came from a sampling of kindergarten students from the other 6 elementary schools. And the intervention group were kindergartners in 1 school. So, that's it for me, unless there's questions. Yes?
I was wondering if there was a PA coach here.
Well, we don't have a PA here. We just didn't realize it was going to be on BCTV, and he needed. So I set up the best system I can give you tonight. Sorry.
Other questions for Veronica? Marshall?
Your last statement was that the control group was from 6 schools, 6 classes?
Samplings of kindergartners from 6 other schools, and the intervention group was from a town school.
Okay, so the one sample is from all the kindergartens in the district. Are the Wyndham Southeast Union Supervisory Union?
From the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union.
Right. Okay,
Yes.
But,
A total of 7 schools. The intervention came from a town school. The control came from the 6 others.
One of Brattleboro schools.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you, Veronica. So to finish up our piece of this presentation from the literacy coach.
Hello. I'm Brian Bittner, and this is my 3rd year as the district, or actually supervisory union literacy coach. And prior to that, I was a teacher here at Academy School for, I don't know, how many years? 10 years? And before that, I taught 3rd grade and special education out in New Mexico, where I did some undergraduate and graduate work. So 3 years in this position, and it's been an amazing journey, and I've learned a lot. Sort of an overview of my job. I do a lot of different things. Probably the most important thing I do is I work with teachers in their classrooms, helping to improve the quality of literacy instruction that we have not only in Brattleboro Town Schools, but throughout the supervisory union. That looks like a lot of different things. I help teachers pilot new programs. I observe teachers teaching and get feedback. I co-teach with teachers, and I help troubleshoot sticky spots that teachers might be having in the teaching of reading, which is extremely complex and not as simple as we would hope. Another part of my role is coaches meet with all schools a few times a year to look at all the information we're collecting and make heads and tails of it. With that data, we often take kids and map them to conceptual models of reading. We can explain reading through a variety of conceptual models, and we use our assessments to help tease out what exactly issues kids are having and provide direct instruction to some of those underlying weaknesses while also working towards their strengths. One model we use with the data we have is called the simple view of reading. And the simple view of reading contends that we can explain the complex task of reading through two sort of subgroups. One is the ability to decode words, and second is your ability to comprehend oral language. And I think a question to answer for you, Dr. Tortolani, is oral language is the most important factor in kids coming to us. The oral language trajectory is set at about 36 months of age. And so kind of the amount of words that you've heard from birth to age 3 can largely predict your achievement in literacy without substantial intervention. And I think we have kids that come to us from high incomes versus low incomes. On average here, about 30 million more words by the time they're 3 years old than their less fortunate peers. So that gap is the gap that we deal with in terms of literacy, because oral language really is the sort of the fire, if you will, that cooks the stew of literacy. And so without it, without oral language, you're at a huge disadvantage for reading printed text.
Is that amount of words in volume or vocabulary?
No, it's the amount of words heard. But it does directly correlate to vocabulary size.
Would TV count?
Nope. Words spoken directly to the child. And what's interesting is a study called Meaningful Differences. All families have the same amount of business talk, right? So do this, be here, do that. All families across income. But it's the talk beyond business talk, right? It's the interaction and it's the play with language. It's the dance of language. It's the interaction between parent and child that is so crucial for developing those early literacy skills.
Is that the reading?
Well, it's reading to kids, but really you can think about books as almost, I hate to say it because I'm a literacy coach, but it's almost a crutch, right? Because we don't need books to speak to kids, but books do provide us with, and they do serve a purpose, obviously, with some concepts of print and learning about how books work. But we don't need books to develop oral language. You need interaction, direct interaction with parent and child.
Sometimes the parent needs to book in order to carry on the conversation.
Correct.
Not so much the child.
Correct. Yeah. And so as we move less and less from an oral language culture to a digital culture, it is interesting conundrum before us. Yeah.
Two things. I'd like to clarify the statistic. Do you mean, you said 3 million?
30.
30 million.
More words.
Not 30 million different words, but
30 million more words. Not different. Just volume of words.
Number of words, okay, so the same word repeated sometimes. Okay, that was what was throwing me a little bit.
Yeah.
The other one is, are you involved with the literacy in more than one language or just English?
Just English.
Okay. And
It's enough. Keeps me busy.
okay. So who could answer questions about how the language program's going?
I could not answer that for you.
Okay.
And there's,
Is there any study on that if a child was not started in English?
not that I'm aware, I mean, not research that I would feel comfortable talking about here.
Do you have any link to early education centers, people and parents who actually have to do the talking to the kids?
Do I?
Does the program have any connection?
I did do 3 sessions of professional development with all the preschool providers here. It's I would say a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's the work that needs to be done. I mean, with our families, promoting an oral language culture, and we just don't have that. And then there's a gold mine of work to do out there. Professional development, I hire, and I provide professional development. I think I've provided or hired 50 sessions of professional development throughout kindergarten through 8th grade in Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union. I'm trained in a variety of professional development methods, I guess, and I've been providing that throughout the supervisory union. And I'm also heavily involved in assessment, both on a district level, classroom level, and with individual kids. There's a lot of kids out here who sort of don't fit nicely into how we would like them to look, and they often take multiple layers of looking at kids and trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And I think what we found is finding those kids in kindergarten and providing those interventions as quickly as possible. We're seeing great gains. As you have seen, we've seen a great growth in our kneecap scores, and we're also in the last 4 years have about an 18% reduction in special ed numbers, and that's pretty exciting.
George, what kind of interventions, what form of
In kindergarten, often we're working on developing oral language, and we're developing something called phonological awareness, which is
how is the oral language?
through a variety of methods, usually through interactive read-alouds with text and prompting and questioning, and getting kids to talk about text, and getting kids to answer and to generate questions about things that they've heard. And that's where the magic happens right in kindergarten. Question?
Yes, could you say something about the writing situation? Is that something you also get into? And do you have any words of wisdom for the district in terms of addressing the lower?
Yep, so this is the third year in my job. First thing I really wanted to work on was we worked on an assessment plan, and I would say beefing up the assessment and data we collected on kids. Second was providing what I would call phonological awareness and word level work in kindergarten through third grade. And we've also this year also been working a lot on thinking about how we help kids process text, also called comprehension. The next part of my work is writing, and actually on April 10th, I'll scheduled a meeting with the Vermont Writing Collaborative, who will be sending an author, that's a woman who's co-authored the book, to meet with myself and Lyle Holiday and representatives from each school as sort of a beginning place to start looking at what writing looks like across the supervisory union. So that's sort of the next to do. It was not the first thing on my list, although it's a known issue. I think with the work and the hard work of the teachers and the leadership team and myself, that we'll be able to see equally impressive gains in writing as we have in reading and math.
Just an observation, with a number of my retirees who come in with respiratory infections after being with their grandchildren, I think that might be there's something there, there's a resource there. The grandparents, for example, writing letters, teaching kids how to write letters and writing a letter to their grandparents and asking for a reply. I think grandparents play a big role in some of the education of preschoolers and young. And it's probably because some of these retirees have a little bit of time on their hands and could spend more time with their grandchildren. It's kind of a resource that I think we're not using well enough, and I don't know how to do it exactly, so keep that in mind.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mary Payne, District 2, can you tell us a little bit, if you've done any studies yet, about how, even when my children went to school, they were encouraged to not write, but rather use computers to generate their reports on. So is there any data on that and how that's reflected into the writing piece?
There is. I mean, so handwriting, cursive or print, is so it's about the 10 or 20% fine motor task, and it's about 80% linguistic. So your knowledge of language and letters and letter sounds and word shapes and form has a huge impact on writing. So we encourage writing, handwriting, traditional writing, printing, and cursive. We have handwriting programs in kindergarten through third grade where we explicitly teach kids how to write. But we also are encouraging kids to write, but also to take that writing and have it represented in digital form. So we do both, and I think it's we continue to stress writing and spelling, but we are also moving into the digital age and having kids do a lot of work with computers. We have iPads, we have computers, and I think the Common Core standards we adopted strongly encourage digital education.
I'm really hopeful we can keep moving through the presentation. Next up, team from Academy School.
I'm Andy Petrilli, principal at Academy, and BCTV's here. They asked that I use a mic. The mic is really dangerous.
If I use a mic, it's really dangerous. It might be here a long time. So, just before I start, I do want to, we know the most important factor in making students successful, academically successful in our school. We know what that is, regardless of their socioeconomic background. The single most important factor is not their socioeconomic background. It's the teacher in the classroom. And it's the supports and tools that the teacher brings with her that determines the success of the student. And we have some information and data to share with you, which will bear that out. Well, with me tonight, also presenting, is Jean Schultz, 2nd grade, Maureen Parzik in kindergarten, and Teen Reed, 3rd grade. Oh, I didn't tell you, we're moving to 3rd. So we've been asked by the school board to present because this presentation that you're about to see, we're actually doing in Philadelphia on Saturday to a national audience, national a group of educators, but don't clap because it's an hour-and-a-half presentation. We're going to try and get through quickly, though. So, our story begins in 2006. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to let you know that we're a public school, of course, K through 6, about 365 students, and about 57% of our students qualify for free and reduced. And that's typical in Brattleboro Town right now. About 55 to 60% of our students are free and reduced students. Our story begins in 2006, when at that time we were high poverty, meaning more than 50% of our students qualified for free and reduced lunch, and we're a low-performing school, which means that 50% of our students weren't proficient on NECAP, our state assessment. We also had the lowest reading and math scores in the district. Students with disabilities were seldom proficient on the state assessment. In fact, in reading, only 6% of our students with disabilities were proficient, and 3% in math in 2006. Economically disadvantaged students lagged well behind. The gap between those students and the rest of the school was about 55 points at Academy. And we were below state average in every category, and perhaps more importantly, we didn't work well together. So in 2011, I'm going to speed up, right through 5 years, we boast the highest math scores in the district. Our scores this year are 73% proficient. Second highest reading scores in the district, 78%. Students with disabilities are often proficient. 45% in reading, so from 6% to 45%, and in math, 35%, so from 3% to 35% proficient. And we're above the state average in every category, and we get along. So I had to bring them out for coming here tonight. I'm going to show you a few more graphs. You've probably seen enough graphs, enough data to last you quite a while. I'm going to show you a few more. This shows our math and reading scores, our percentage of students proficient 2006 to 2011. And in math, we're about less than half of our students were proficient. We've gone from that to 73%, and reading from 60% to 78%. This is the data that the state uses to determine AYP, or what's called adequate yearly progress. So the top bar is the state target. That blue line is the state target. That's the AMO. The red bar is all of our students who are tested in reading at that point. The green is students from free and reduced lunch, and the purple are students with disabilities. So you can see in 2006, the gap between the school, all students, and the green free and reduced lunch was pretty large. It was in excess of 50 points. In special education students, it was greater than 200 points. It was a 4-lane highway you could drive down. And now we've narrowed the gap. You can see the path of our special ed students. They've gained most. They've gone way up. We've closed the gap of our socioeconomic students, are free and reduced substantially. And we've done that while our high achievers got better. So we didn't close the gap by reducing their proficiency. We closed the gap by moving all kids forward. This is a similar graph for math. It shows very similar results for that time period. This is a view of students who performed in reading at the highest and lowest results on NECAP. Students take this assessment can get 4 scores, a 1, 2, 3, or 4. 4 is the highest, proficient with distinction. The lowest is substantially below proficient. The blue is proficient with distinction. So in 06 in reading, we had about 8% of our students were at the highest, performing at the highest level in reading. In 2011, 25%, 1 out of 4. Conversely, in 06, students who were at the lowest level, about 13%, and that's down to 3%. In math, in 06, we had about 8% of our students were proficient with distinction. You can see now that's at 25%, so there's been almost a tripling of the students performing at the highest level. And most startling about this graph is that in 2006, 30% of our students who took that assessment, over 200 students, were performing at the lowest levels of mathematics, 1 out of 3. Today, that's down to 11%. So we're really proud of our students and, of course, our staff. And to tell you how we did that, is Gene Schultz.
You have to come to Philadelphia.
He has to come all the time.
So we knew we had to change. We had too many of our children were struggling. And as Andy said, we had some pockets of collaboration, but overall, we weren't working together on a common vision. So changes that we made, we started with structural things from changing classrooms. People were moving across the building so that teams could be closer together, so grade level teams. You know, there was a kindergarten teacher over here and one over there and another one, and now they're all 3 together. So that could work on our collaboration and have our staff closer together. We changed our scheduling. And in the past, what would happen with teachers would just say, okay, I'm going to make my schedule, and this is what I'm going to do. Instead, we took the schedule more globally, and we started with a literacy block that was scheduled in your day. It was 90 minutes minimum, uninterrupted time. We were working on reading skills and word work components and all of these important skills that Brian has been explaining to you. Additionally, we have a writing time that's 30 to 40 minutes. These times were very inconsistent through the building. So you might have had somebody that was working on writing for 45 minutes, or you might have had them working on it for 15 minutes. We made these non-negotiable. We said, no, you have to do it for at least this amount of time. Math was increased to a 60-minute block. Again, some people might have been doing 40 minutes. Some people might have already been doing 60 or 70 minutes. But we made it a mandatory, non-negotiable, that you had to teach math for at least this amount of time. 60 minutes plus a 10-minute what we call classroom routines, or a time where we're going to work on some more skills. So our schedule became one that was very structured to make sure that we were meeting these important areas. The most important to me in the scheduling that happened was avoiding of the pullouts. In the past, we would pull out students from reading time to work on math, or to work on more reading, or we'd pull them out of math time to work on reading. Well, you can see what would happen there. They'd just get further behind. So your little guy that was already behind in reading is now behind in math because he's missing the core parts of that. So we made that big change, that those pullouts, when we said uninterrupted time, that's what we meant. You're not going to come in and take the child out of that core time. So that was a really big change for us.
The next thing that we changed was our administration listened to the staff, and we talked about time. We don't have time to meet and to collaborate. We're trying to do this as teams where we take an entire grade level. We look at all of the children across the board. What's different about Academy School is that we have 3 strands. So that means that we have 3 second grade teachers, 3 of the 5th grade teachers. And that's different than like Oak Grove where they have 1 first grade teacher. So the only way that we're going to be able to collaborate with each other would be if we had time. So the administration was able to take our schedules and put our specialist classes, like our library, music, gym classes, and schedule that back to back so that that would give us an hour of time. So at the time when the second grade teachers are meeting, my class might be in library and Kathy's class might be in gym. We scheduled it in a way that every week we have an hour planning time. And that time gives us weekly time to collaborate and plan for our students. The other thing is it gives us monthly times to meet with these great people that have talked to you, the data people, so we have times where that's scheduled in as well. So that collaboration is built into our week. I'm still doing it backwards. See, good thing we're practicing. There we go. You can give me a tutorial. Our classroom support changed as well. Our academic support teachers, which are Title I teachers, is what a lot of people know them. They are additional teachers that in the past, we've had them for a long time. They've been in the building, but they might be working with 1 grade at one time, another grade at another time, and we changed it so that every grade level had a person assigned to them. And this person became a 4th teacher responsible for that grade level. So our academic support teachers are part of that team. And that's been a change as well, is that they come into the classrooms and help us with math as well. In the past, it used to be really just literacy. They were sort of the reading specialists. But now we're involving them in a lot of our math instruction as well. We started a math lab where we put materials and staff together to try to support the math and give us another resource to help the children. And we targeted our younger students for additional support, which Brian talked about. This was a really hard change, as I'm sure Team could tell you, because we took a lot of staff that was working with older students and we brought it down, and we tried to give our children that safety net. We said, okay, we're going to give all this extra support here, so by the time they get to you in 5th and 6th grade, there aren't going to be as many of them. But those first few years, that was really hard because they had to come up with other ways to meet the needs of those children, and they didn't have as much support. So that was a sacrifice on their part, and they did it. They were troopers. So, and now we're finding that that's really paying off. Huge, huge dividends, the way it's paying off, as Brian and Andy both talked about our numbers being so much less than special education. Nope. Okay, now I have to do this for everyone, Andy? Got it. One thing that we started 3 years ago is our extended day tutorial program. This is an after-school program that we started with tutoring, and we have teachers and paraprofessionals that provide these services. It's very specific. The teachers set goals for kids. We target children who are really close to meeting their benchmarks. Thanks. And we try to get them to have the extra support based on goals, based on the data. They come and they stay after school. We provide a bus for them, and it's really made a great difference because they're getting that the extra skills. We added our district data literacy and math coaches have been a big improvement for us as resources, and they explain their whole job. So professional development has been huge. We've always done professional development. Teachers value that, and it's always something we're always looking for more of. But in the past, we would go, to a workshop, 2 or 3 of us, and now we're doing it as a staff. So the work that Brian talked about and Veronica talked about, the math work that we've done and the letters training that Brian has brought to us, it's staff-wide, so it's so much more powerful. And we've also done study groups on books, and because it's staff-wide, it just keeps building our common vision. We're all on the same page. We're all moving in the same direction. Can you do 2 for this? We started a best practices committee. The job of that committee was we looked at it. We wanted to start to really look at the research. We wanted to see ways that we could investigate and implement best practices. And from that came 3 important things. The first are the teacher leaders. We have 2 in literacy and math, and they're classroom teachers who really work hard. They get together our professional development. They make sure that our staff meetings are focused on ways that we can improve student achievement, not so much nuts and bolts of a staff meeting or anything. And so they've really been amazing. So that has made a big difference for our children and for our teachers because we have that support. The other thing that came out of the Best Practices Committee was our data, our looking at data and how we can use it efficiently. And Maureen is going to talk about that. We had a data committee. Not done yet. And Teen will talk about our motivation, and that was the third thing. The last thing that I just wanted to mention of a change that we made is the response to intervention. The skills block that you've heard a few people talking about tonight, that is that time where we, this has been new this year, but that we've really taken the data, looked at the children across the grade level, put them where they need to be so that the children that need more intervention aren't being pulled out of core time, because that's not core time, that's skills practice time. They're getting to work on those skills. Some kids who are right at grade level and need to keep working right at grade level are in a grade level group, and some are in an enrichment group. So this has been a new initiative of ours that so far is going quite well. And now I'll let Maureen talk. Thanks.
Okay, just so you know, public speaking is not my thing. I'm used to speaking in front of 5-year-olds every day. But public speaking is not my best thing. So one of the biggest changes we've made here at Academy School is around data and assessment. And I know when this idea was first presented to me, just like Bryn said, it was terrifying because I just felt like it was going to be more time out of the classroom and I was just going to have all these stacks of numbers and not know what to do with them. But I'm pleased to say that has not been the case. Okay, go ahead. Thanks. So several years ago, our school was labeled in need of improvement, and we were required by the State Department of Education to write a school improvement plan. And of course, data and assessment is a huge piece of this. The data that we collect informs our instruction and also lets us know about the progress that our students are making, and it enables us to make immediate interventions with our students. It's important to note that we're not always looking at academic data when we're looking at children. Here at Academy School, we collect demographic data, which is about parent involvement, enrollment in school. It's also about, it's also about free and reduced, ethnicity. We also look at perceptions data, how we're viewed by our students and the staff and the parents. And also we do look at academic data, obviously. And all of these pieces together gives us the most complete picture of our students. So we gathered all this data and we said, now what? So what we did is by looking at other schools and their successes, we realized that we needed to form grade level data teams. And these teams consist of the administration, special education, academic support, and ELL. We meet monthly to review progress monitoring data and other various assessments that we've given students so that we can look at how they're doing. And this might be if things are going great, or it might be we need to change how we're doing things. It might be a change of program. It might be that we need more staff to help that child. And we also meet 3 times a year. We have benchmark data days, and these are longer meetings where we take a look at every child and go through, and just to make sure that no one is slipping through the cracks and that everyone is progressing the way we would like. And if we're noticing a trend that the students are not progressing, we need to look at ourselves as teachers and also at their students. Great. Terrific. There you go. T. Reed is going to tell us about motivation.
Motivation. Do I have to? I'm going to stand up here because I can. So I don't know if you noticed before, but when you looked at Academy Schools data, there was a
kind of, I mean, not a huge dip, but a definitive dip between the scores in 2008 and the 2009. So we went into the 2009 NECAP meeting really, really excited to see our scores, and we're kind of upset that they came out lower. So when that best practices committee was formed, we knew that a part of it had to kind of focus around motivation. And there were some things that we looked at when we started to think about how we're going to motivate our kids to really show how well they're doing. So we knew that the kids were making great gains in their academic work in the classroom. We could see it every day. We saw that they were proud of their work. Improvement was consistently celebrated in classrooms, so it wasn't, whoever does the best on the test is something that we look at. It's whoever's really making improvements. That was like a huge thing for kids at any level. They were really proud of their academic work, and we were giving them consistent feedback in the classroom about where they were in relation to the goal and how they could kind of bridge that gap. This is that dip that I was talking about. So if you look at 2009, you'll see it goes down a little bit. So we decided we really have to get the kids motivated. And so we started to kind of take a step back, and we looked at the NECAPs through our students' eyes and through these other assessments through our students' eyes. In the classroom, hard work is followed by immediate feedback. The kids are praised by us for what they do. They're praised by their fellow students for what they do. They have this intrinsic sense of satisfaction, and we give them positive reinforcement, whether it be actual, tangible things or just elements of praise. Then we looked at NECAP through our students' eyes. And hard work in the NECAP for them leads essentially to nothing. They don't really get feedback. The test scores come back months later, which is, education is not great practice on how to give kids feedback. You want to give it to them immediately. And they weren't really, there was no reinforcement for them doing well. So if they did well, great. They didn't get anything. If they didn't do well, it kind of ended there. So we formed the NECAP Motivation Committee with this question underlying all our work, what motivates our kids? R is capitalized because it's really important, we thought, to really look deeply at our kids and see what motivates them. So we formed some things in, I'm going to go back for a second. So we did some things in the classroom. We gave kids all sorts of praise. We taught them test-taking strategies. We don't have kids sit down and take tests a lot in a very isolated way. We do a lot of collaborative work, and kids share their thinking a lot. So this idea of taking a test is different for them. So we might teach them, when you're taking a test, you go back and you check your work, multiple choices, you look for the best answer, process of elimination, that kind of thing. We constantly were telling them that we knew they could do it. There's no sense among our staff that among our staff is that every student will succeed. Every student can do this, and we really relay that to our kids on a regular basis. So we started to do things school-wide. We have All School Sing, which I'm not sure that people here are familiar with, but once a week the whole school gets together. It's a great community builder, and we sing songs, and teachers come up and they tell kids things and all that kind of thing. So we started to institute the NECAP cheerleaders, which I'm the E. So we would come out and we would cheer for the kids. We would do skits about the NECAP and how much we believed in them, and we knew they could do it, and they got more and more excited as the cheerleaders came out. We had some great minds on the NECAP Motivation Committee. I never would have thought of that, but it was great. We also have a pep rally the day before the NECAP starts, where the younger kids who don't take the NECAP make signs and they cheer for the kids. And as the kids run in, which is, it's pretty awesome for the 3rd through 6th graders as they run in. And we have people who give some motivational speeches to the kids, which is really great. The kids are psyched to take this test before it starts, so that's it. Throughout the whole time of the NECAP, it's 3 weeks for 5th graders, and it's 2 weeks for 3rd, 4th, and 6th graders. It's a long time for kids to have to sit and take this test. So we have a NECAP store every day. They earn dime stamps as they continue to persist through this very difficult and time-consuming test, and they're able to go and buy things at the NECAP store afterwards. Our 2nd graders help, which is awesome because they are working on multiples of 10. So as we give them dime stamps, the kids are practicing their multiples of 10. And they can also buy trinkets which they like. They also buy these things called golden tickets, which is time spent with teachers. It might be lunch with a teacher, it might be helping with an art class, helping with a PE class. We had a huge number of golden tickets bought this year, some ridiculous amount, and they're the most expensive thing the kids could buy. So it takes like 3 days of work the whole time of the test to buy a golden ticket. And then Mr. Patchouli promised the kids at All Schools Sing, before we did the kneecap, that if the kids' scores went up, he would kiss a cow. And the kids were like wild about it. It was interesting to me because we live in Vermont, so they've probably seen cows, but they could not. They were so excited. They would draw pictures of Mr. Patchouli kissing the cow. So when scores came back, it had been built up into such a big thing that it turned into this whole community town fair for the kids. And there were circus performers there. The teachers had a pie eating contest, which was awful. And there were relay races and stuff like that. It was a really fun time. So why does work for Academy School? We really listened. Oops, sorry. Yeah, that's all right. You're welcome. We really listened to our kids and found out what motivated them and would get them excited. Our teachers are totally invested. One of our 5th grade teachers here at school, one of my partners in 5th grade, came at like 8 o'clock at night, the night before the kneecap starts, with her headlamp and chalked up the entire sidewalk with pictures for the kids, like, you can do this, beat this test. We have changed our culture in the school to one that believes that every student can succeed and that we're really here to support them with what they need. And we say to them, yes, you can, on a consistent basis. Until they do.
Arthur Davis, District 3. First of all, I just want to say it's really, really great. One question I have, I guess, mostly with those last 3 things there, which I think are really, really great, really important things. Wondering whether teachers were invested, changed the culture, and we say, yes, you can. Whether those are more generally about success in learning and life, or very specifically about the kneecap.
No, that's a great question.
It seems like there's been a lot of kneecap.
Yeah. At this point in the year, we don't really talk about the kneecap very much. These 3 things are still evident. So constantly we're telling the kids, yes, they can do it. Yes, they can do anything they try and put their mind to. So kneecap is a big focus, like right before the test, because we want to get the kids excited. But throughout the rest of the year, it's really more just, we know you guys can do anything you try.
Yeah, kneecap is only a measurement of what students are learning. We want the kids to do well on kneecap, obviously, because there are consequences for that for us. But what we talk about constantly is persistence, determination. You can do it. We're talking about learning. We're talking about student achievement. And we're talking about them being successful not only in 1st grade or 2nd grade or 3rd grade, but in 8th grade, 9th grade, juniors and seniors in high school, graduating, not dropping out, going on to college and the world of work. Yes.
I also want to say, sorry, like the kneecap cheerleaders have actually turned to the star cheerleaders, because we're the Academy Comets, and so we call all of our kids Academy Stars, which has a specific meaning at Academy School. So it's really more about how they are stars. So we do this thing as the cheerleaders where we call to the kids who's an Academy Star, and a rousing, unbelievably loud roar of "We Are" comes back every time. So it's really shifted towards, you can succeed in anything, where it started with a really big kneecap focus to more broad.
Rick? Yeah. Speaking of succeeding in anything, back to my question about language. How's the language program going?
It's going well, thank you. Yeah. We're doing it, it's this year in Academy in Oak Grove, it's grades 2 through 6, Spanish. Next year it'll be expanded 1 through 6 at Academy Oak Grove, and Green Street French is K through 6 right now. But I think not to be facetious, but I think it's going very well.
Great, thanks.
Pen?
How are these being transferred to the other schools?
The
philosophy and the
of the whole program you're doing over to Oak Grove and Green Street?
I guess I'd speak for the entire SU. I mean, I think we have a very strong leadership team. I think the people in the curriculum and assessment office, the coaches, the principals, the support staff, we meet monthly. We set goals in terms of a supervisory union action plan that kind of gives the overarching principles for our district, but then every school has an action plan with similar goals that is much more concrete and specific to their schools. So I just feel like we continue this philosophy throughout each school. I don't know if principals want to talk specifically.
We also have a few times a year grade level meetings where the different grade level teachers get together and share these successes with each other. As Ron mentioned, the action plan, we're working on, we all can learn a lot from each other, and we're doing a more comprehensive and focused job of doing that now. We're writing those pieces into our action plans, and it's great that we can learn from each other's successes.
Oak Grove is, being a smaller school, and just like all our schools, there's differences in the culture of each school. I can say consistently, I think one of the things that the coaches talked about was a consistent academic curriculum. And that, in addition to making that commitment to a schedule, I could say at Oak Grove, we're very similar. I did come from Academy to Oak Grove, and I stole as many great ideas as I could coming with me. And then have adapted that much to the culture of Oak Grove School. I think in all three schools you're going to continue to see this progress, and you're going to continue to see our students succeed because we have three terrific schools in Brattleboro Town that I couldn't be prouder to be a part of, and I think we're going to continue to see that as a community as well. So.
Yeah, and Jen's selling herself a little short on that as far as that stealing the ideas, because she was with us through some of this work. She was a part of that, so her work is here too. So.
Can't help but be impressed by what's happened and how far it's come and the progress that's made. To that end, and to what you just said about comparing how students will do, are there plans to track the students through high school to see, in fact, how well they do as a group, perhaps from each of the elementary schools, as individuals, whatever, to see how well these programs, which seem to be paying off here, pay off by the time students are seniors?
Well, we began a year or two ago at tracking data all the way to the high school and the high school graduation rates. So we've only begun that work in the last year or two, but you're right on. That's exactly what we're doing.
All right, thank you. We're going to get into the budget information phase now.
Thanks, everybody, coaches, staff. Thanks so much. We're always happy to give a nice, meaty school report night. Thank you for your excellent questions. I hope this has helped you to understand what we're trying to do in our elementary schools. We're really working very hard to give all our students the basis they need to be successful in life, not just successful in school. So let's talk about the budget. If you want to refer to, the budget starts on page 137 on the book. We also have some extra handouts that have updated numbers. Just really quickly, the budget for the district shows an overall increase in 2013 of 1.57%, or $230,207. The major increases contributing to that are, we added a little over $38,000 to the foreign language program. We have more classes coming into that system, and adding to that, we had our WSESU assessment, which is our data coaches that you learned so much about, and then many of the other services of the SU, including our general business office, curriculum and assessment, special ed, administrative services, English as a second language, psychological and speech services. All these important supports for our students that are provided to schools throughout the SU. Our assessment went up $81,450. We added into the budget $46,290 for after-school tutoring and enrichment. As you saw in our presentation, having students have more opportunities for both academic support and also the opportunities to do other things within the school, like music, arts, circus arts, all sorts of after-school programs that add enrichment and also help to extend the school day. Those programs we're finding to be very important to all of our school communities. We also added $92,503 for building maintenance. Our internet access budget went up because we're part of the Fiber Connect program. That was $25,200. There is an expectation that we will have some offsetting revenue, about 60 to 70% of that from the program. The other sort of big line item in our budgets, salaries and benefits, overall went down due to teachers taking our early retirement incentive over the past several years. You'll get to hear this all again, but since it's getting late, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or Jim will, or Ron.
Catherine Turner, District 3, you said that teachers took early retirement. Did they take it because they had to? Did they take it because they wanted to? Why would somebody take early retirement?
We've offered a retirement incentive for the last 3 years, SU-wide, primarily BUHS 6 in Brattleboro Town. There were a number of positions throughout the district that were reduced probably 3 years ago because of the economic times or challenges. And we felt like by offering that incentive, we'd give people a chance to, have that opportunity to retire. And many people in our district had, I think we had something like, I want to say 45 teachers with 30 years or plus, 35 years plus. And I think it was a good opportunity for people to take the retirement. In some cases, we did not fill the positions the first year. And in many cases, in the second and third year, we have filled the positions with people with less experience, less salary on the salary schedule. And I think it's been great to infuse the district with some really new teachers to complement a great veteran staff that we do have. So it's all voluntary. I think it's worked out really well for the individual teachers, and it certainly has helped the budget, which was kind of a secondary factor.
Billy.
Billy Stark, District 1. Actually, you answered most of my questions with telling me where the big expenses were. Page 144, are we adding a custodian here at Academy or a part-time custodian? That's up 20%, 15,000.
We were not adding a position.
You're not adding any custodial help?
Are you looking on the salary line?
I'm looking on custodial salaries in the academy. Well, I just wondered if we were adding part-time or
Plus
adding
15,000.
a percentage time or. Shuffling them around maybe.
No, the FY13 budget reflects the projected actual. The lead custodians, they're receiving an adjustment under the union contract. Before they were paid at wage grade 3 level, and it's going to be wage grade 5 for FY13. And this also adjusts somewhat for a little bit of overtime. But bottom line total on that section, there's a little under a 4% increase. There is a large increase just in academy, but overall it's less than 4%.
On page 142, program improvement. I'm just wondering what, the professional development line is a lot, and I'm wondering if that has to do with the data folks that were here earlier. And environmental programs, Academy at Elk Grove, is that Elk program still, or can you just explain to me a little bit about what, that's up 56%.
The program improvement, it is part of the, some of the work you saw, that a lot of that is for the teacher leaders that they were talking about, which are folks who are helping to build the teams to be more effective. Environmental education.
Environmental program.
Yeah, that's, at Academy, that's still ELF, and
It's
what, it hasn't been named.
four wins
Four
and
wins.
wins and E.
What page?
So, yeah, 4 wins and work with the Brattleboro Environmental Education Center.
And we were previously funding that through the town school district endowment program. Again, a couple of years ago when the budgets was really tight, we said we wanted to continue the programming, but we wanted to fund it outside of the budget. So I think this just brings it back into the budget.
Chris Linwell, District 2. I have a question not about the financial numbers, but the school age enrollment numbers on page 135. Just wondering if you could tell me in terms of those total numbers, what percentage of students in the district are coming to the public school district here versus other options they have? I mean, and do these numbers reflect just general population or increase or decline in coming to attending public schools?
Well, it reflects a small decline. We did a birth rate analysis a few years back, and these projections are pretty on in terms of students, early age students aging into the system. I don't know that we have any current data in terms of students that are of age going to private placements. I don't sense that that's any larger number than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I don't even know what that number is in the past. I was just looking for some context.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, Mary Kane, District 2. Can you please tell us how the abatements of the educational portion of the taxes affected you directly from the Irene abatements? Or have they not affected you in any way?
Yeah, it hasn't affected us. It has not affected us. So let me just clarify what you're asking. Individuals who's had homes that had abatement, tax abatement?
Not just individuals, companies that lost great portions of their property who were granted abatement. Having served on the Board of Abatements, maybe Ben could answer that more clearly, but we had discussion about the educational portion and the municipal portion, which I think is at a state level greater from what I understand, you may be reimbursed for anything that was abated at some point, possibly? Do you know anything about that?
The tax liability for education is all through the state, even though the town collects for the residents of Brattleboro for the pre-K-6 schools and the high school. So the impact, any abatements or adjustments actually flow through the towns because they collect the taxes. There have been no changes on the educational tax rate. The projected base rate for the coming year, and there was a handout on the yellow pieces of paper, the projected educational residential rate for next year is 88 cents. So for the schools, we're showing a decrease of 1.79 cents. That would include Brattleboro Town Schools plus Brattleboro's share of the high school. But all the tax, the credits, abatements, et cetera, they would be directly through the town. The schools, we get all of the money assessed via the state tax. We receive part of it directly from the town, and the balance is from the state of Vermont.
Anything else? Wow, we dated you into submission. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you on Saturday.